Yeah, we'll be going live here in a moment. We're starting up anyway. If you want to find yourself a place to practice a little bit of standing, now would be the time. Okay, that should be pretty good. The shade has arrived as the sun goes down, and the wind has been picking up for the last hour, so it's quite cold, so I'm going to try and add another layer. And got some hot tea, which I had anyway, some gloves, and my guess here is that this will be a little cold for me. Gotta kind of figure out where I'm standing today. Maybe we got a little bit of level right about here. This would be a good marker for level for me. I feel like we've done 7 of these. I think we did 3, and then a review, and then we did 3 more after that. So I think probably we'll do a review today and see how that goes. And I'm gonna just see if I can share this a little bit with whoever. Qigong. Yeah, so just posting this around a little bit, see who might join us. And that's about all I can think to share it with. If you can think of somebody to share it with, that'd certainly be helpful. So please consider doing that. While you're at it, click that notification icon so that when I do go live, you might be notified. So I've just been standing in my little horse stance now. I have a cane here with us. We got our a chair as an alternative for practice. We even have our Lín, our little unicorn, which I think is in the camera now, yeah, to remind us. So for me, I pretty much always start with horse stance. That's kind of our mother stance, or basic. It's funny to call it a mother stance because the term is quite nearly the same in Chinese. The intonation varies, but the word ma is the same. Also, ocean, that's another fun one. Mother, ocean, horse. So I have my feet pointed straight ahead, which for me today is about southwest, we'll call it. So I'm quite aware of the track of that southwest, and hopefully these can help indicate that line. We were working on the rooster yesterday, thinking I was using the cane, but I might normally use something like this that I can just stake into the ground and then feel where my knee is in relation to the ball of the foot. But here I'm going to hopefully have a little bit of increased visibility for you to see that north, southwest northeast line. And so that's the line I'll describe as the heel to the toe, or the middle toe, I suppose, or the toes, heel to toe line. So that's my ahead, that's my forward, that's my straight, that's my basis, my default position. And so I have my feet hip width apart, maybe shoulder width apart, somewhere in there. I'm not feeling like I'm standing much differently than I might in the grocery store, just waiting in line for something. Somebody maybe would stand something like this. I kind of watch how people stand all the time in these kind of weird positions of relative relaxation, but inefficiency. So I would call this a smaller stance, maybe not quite small or narrow, but it's certainly not wide enough to make me really commit to one leg and sink down, or to feel like I'm much slower. As we take longer, deeper, wider stances, quite often we're going to feel like, well, besides the workout, this is going to take me more time to move. And if I do move, I may have to kind of lurch and lean, or really rapidly exert, and then use the arms to help, and then I'm moving again. So this is a small basic stance. And my first practice is just to bend the knees in such a way that they move in the direction of the balls of the feet, which is to say southwest for me. And that tracking, I'm unbending now so I can do it again. That tracking is driving, letting the knees find their way in the path that the heel toe is, that I have these fluorescent markers showing. And then unbend, bend. So I'm just encouraging that track. That track can be harder if we have our feet much more separated, if we're much lower, certainly if we're tired. It can be harder if I am forgetful. It can be harder if I'm distracted. I have other things I'm working on. If you happen to need something to steady yourself at this point, please feel free, go for it, have it at the ready. So I'm just practicing that tracking. Certainly I can deepen the stance, I can slow the stance, I can do this an awful lot of repetitions to find a workout, a stretch, a warm-up. So sink the knees, track forward. The knees don't go beyond the balls of the feet. And if they happen to go beyond the balls of the feet, they absolutely, definitely don't go beyond the toes. That is because I enjoy the health of my knees, and physics and physiology, not to mention arthroscopy and all that. So sinking over and over, tracking. Notice that I'm just coming down that very little bit. I'm sinking, I don't know, 2.5 inches today, something like that, maybe an inch, maybe inch and a half. I'm not making a big production out of it. One way I think I'll just kind of use this chair as an example. I don't know how perfect this is. Yeah, maybe not ideal. But if we have something that's pretty fixed, that's about, I'm just kind of moving myself so that when my knees are atop the balls of the feet, I feel the chair. So I have that feedback, which means I can sense this without looking down. I haven't used this chair for this, but this is working out pretty well. In my case, that's the arm of the chair is reaching just above my kneecap, but that's my feedback. A different chair, different height person, maybe the front of my kneecap touches, maybe the shin touches, doesn't really matter. But some fixed element here, and then my moving element, when it mates with the fixed element, that gives me that feedback that I'm where I ought to be. And if I'm not very sure where it ought to be, take extra amount of time to measure it out, double check. I did that fairly fast because I'm used to doing that kind of test, but certainly we want to make sure, you know, if you're building a yardstick, you're going to spend more time double checking to measure before you finish that yardstick than anything else that you measure and cut, because that yardstick is going to propagate its mistakes. It's going to propagate its measure into everything it's used to measure. So if you're using something like that, don't sort of rapidly and recklessly and relatively inattentively build it or set it up or adjust it. Really take your time. So a couple of reviews. I don't want to make this a horse stance review, just using the horse stance to warm up. Shoulder girdle over the pelvis, pelvis over the feet, eyes find the horizon. Might as well be breathing while we're doing this. Might as well work on relaxing tissues that are not involved in this structure, in this movement. I want to make sure that I don't bow forward as I bend the knees and kind of find myself tipping. You may feel that as your butt moving back, going back to the chair. I got myself a little crowded here between my tea and the cane and everything. Let's see if this would work. Yeah, that's pretty good. I don't know if you can see with my jacket, but I'm sinking, and I can just barely feel the chair kind of touch my pants as I get to the bottom of this. Whereas if my butt was coming back when I come down, there's some good feedback there. Like, oh, okay, I'm bumping. In fact, I feel the chair moving, and so that could give me a nice little bit of, okay, so where am I? Is this where I would like to be? And that's working pretty nicely. So I've just set that up to give me just that little bit of feedback. Good. So I'm going to have a sip of my tea, and I'm going to sink into the horse and just stay there as a warm-up. And I'll check in to see if you have any comments or questions. Feel free to share this live stream. I'll archive it later. The whole idea in this practice is to invite people into doing things at a very, very beginner level, because they'd like to review it, because they'd like to return to it, because that's what they're able to do now. Perhaps post-surgery, perhaps post-childbirth, perhaps post-illness, perhaps post-sedentary period, sedentary epoch, I don't know. And also perhaps, hey, I'm a student of the arts, I can work them at this true beginner's level. I don't need to show how low I can go, how long I can go, how repetitious I can be, how deep I can be. I'm happy to do it at this true beginner's level. Oh, some chai. While we're on the topic, and we're not, no need to say chai tea. That'd be like saying coffee, coffee. There we are. So I've just sat in, I'm in the same stance, and even though here I'm looking for my phone, setting the things, I'm trying not to let the knees pump as I turn. I'm not letting the knee dip in. I'm very clear where the knees are in place, in space, and whatever else I'm doing, they're not changing the coordinates, so the stance has stayed the same. Hey, Jarrett's made it maybe like 3 days in a row. Steven's here. That's your third time visiting. Bob is here. Hey, Bob. Hello, hello. Miss you, sir. Rich is here. Good to see you, Rich. The great grandfather of Pickles is here. That's great. Hey, Anthony, how you doing? Just so you know, Anthony, I'm within 25 feet of solar panels, so everything's going well. We're following your rule. Patricia's here, maybe her fourth time in a row. Hopefully some of you guys are practicing with us. breathing is a good idea. Thank you, Ralph. Yeah. So anyway, yet again, I see no questions, just hellos. Grateful for the hellos, grateful for the shares, but I'm more and more convinced that the dynamic here will not be interactive. If that's the case, I'll probably just continue filming these and post them at my own convenience instead of trying to do it live. It doesn't appear to me that people log in and stick around and do the practice with me, or not too many people. And certainly it doesn't seem like I need to be live where people have questions. And when I've done questions that are not live, mostly, although I've had a few helpful comments, it's really just people seeing it as an opportunity to be funny and write something in the comments. Anyway, I take my work seriously. So I think that the 3 stances that we did, since we did a review, were cat stance, Lín Stance, and metal chicken stance, or golden rooster stance. So I think those are the 3 that were reviewed today. I'm going to just try and hang out in the horse a little bit, maybe have another sip, and then start reviewing. As we've done in this series, I'm trying really hard not to do anything particular with the arms. Most of my training, says, when you do this stance, do this or do that or do something like this and have that practice. And I'm trying to simplify the practice, direct our focus, and make the whole thing simpler, more accessible. So that's my plan. One of my thoughts about that is that since that's the plan, and I'm not kind of holding a posture or gesture as I do it, well, I can check in on the live stream, on the phone as we go, and interact. Oh, thank you, Jared. The space behind us looks wonderful. And hi, Donna. How are you? Donna is obviously hiking and following along whilst on a hike, because that's all she's doing all the time. Yeah, I don't know what you can see behind me, Jared, exactly. I may be just in the way of the Tory, but the Tory is back over there, the bit of red that you may see. I guess that's probably the Tory just underneath my hand. And the great birch just nearest to me is the Healing Fairy Garden, just over here. I don't know if you guys might be able to see part of the tractor I parked over here. Today was a tractoring day. Okay, so let's start with cat, which I think is the order that we did it in. And while my left foot is facing to the southwest, I'm going to shift my weight to that, being careful not to kick a hip up and not to let the butt go out. So I'm shifting, which means my knee tracks, and I can bend my knee if I'd like to the level that I want to be at. And this is an empty foot. I'm going to place my foot out to the more difficult version, which is to the north and west, because so it's 90 degrees apart here about. My foundation foot is southwest. My empty stance, the empty part, some people call this a tricky stance, is northwest. So in this position, normally cat stance, we're going to be more facing the empty leg than not. So I wouldn't normally be facing the foundation leg when it's 90 degrees, but I may not fully face it. So here I'm going to be somewhere in the middle, kind of facing west and directing my attention to the northwest. But in either case, this knee continues its track, continues to be a fixed point around which the other joints articulate the rest of the body. So you'll see somebody in a posture facing facing this direction as they go. So one thing that I wanted to talk about that I think I left out or didn't get into that level of detail when we did cat, which is this empty stance or a single-legged stance, as when we did the metal chicken, is that maybe I'll just come back to facing front. So at this point, essentially, we'll just call it no weight on my right leg, which means all of this portion of my body is supported by this leg over here. So architecturally, all of this weight is kind of on this shelf. So this shelf of the pelvis or the belt this shelf is kind of equally weighted near the support and then away from it, right? And as we've seen with a shelf, if I have too much weight on a shelf, it wants to sag and pull away from the wall, and certainly too much weight at the front of the shelf, far from the wall, or the back of the furniture or whatever, is going to make that shelf want to slant towards you, towards the front face. So in an empty stance, if I don't have the strength in the hips, it may very well be that this weight causes me to feel that one hip is higher than the other, right? So as if this hip is not strong enough to hold me up, it may very well be my experience that the weighted side is a little lower than the unweighted side, which I may experience as the unweighted side rising. More likely, the weighted side is dipping, and I decide that that's a rise here. Probably not. So here in a cat stance, I've just come back to where we first framed it out. I want to just check in. Am I developing a little bit low in the unweighted side from the weight not being supported directly beneath? So I need a strong functional joint here, and this is pretty complex to call it a joint. It's quite complex, a region, and that has to have the strength to hold me up and also to hold me level, not simply up but level. So I can check in on that in a cat stance. I'll do the same thing when we're in the chicken or other unweighted, single-legged stances. But here in the cat, it's a nice place to kind of check in. As we've seen before, when I'm checking in on something that's being checked in on in the easy way to check it in, the easy time. So the cat stance is essentially single-legged, but I still have like a little bit of a kickstand feeling, certainly a little psychological, oh, if I need it, it's there. And maybe occasionally I push with this, or I rest on it a little bit, and I vary some of the weight in the cat stance in the empty side. So there's a much easier way to practice what we might call just single-legged. Although nomenclature would probably tell us this isn't really a single-leg stance per se. Anyway, it's more subtle for me to notice if that hip level is off, that shelf is not strong enough at the rigid point of support, here as opposed to here. So it's subtle for me to notice it. It's not subtle for me to notice it on a single-legged stance, particularly if I do this for a very long period of time. But it's harder to correct when I'm here and under that workload, under that duress, under that stress of the built structure. It's easier to adjust it here. But the harder part of adjusting it where it's easier is that it's more subtle and you may miss it. This can become its own challenge because we learn to miss what is subtle in the easier applications, the earlier applications of our practice and application of the self to the art. And so if your consciousness isn't there, if you're not policing it, if you're not aware of it, if you don't care to be aware of it in your practice, it will show up under duress and stress. Maybe you're very athletic and good genes, whatever, and this doesn't constitute duress and stress, and it doesn't show up for you because you can outlast the teacher and you have legs that are very strong and all the rest. Well, that's okay, but the duress and stress may not be experienced by you in a normal class, but it may be experienced by you when you go to the week-long workshop, the intensive. That might be where you fail. And the failing that you deliver to your art is one of not having paid attention to the subtle signals and or cared about them, and they were made available to you in subtle, simple practice. You might be a particularly fit and gifted individual in terms of acrobatic achievements and lucky DNA and good eating, sleeping, and exercising and all the rest, and youthful enough and all the rest, that you don't particularly experience the duress and stress that a stance may reveal to you minor errors. Even in an intensive or a week-long seminar or a summer abroad training every day, it may not reveal itself to you there. But again, under duress and stress, it will reveal itself. Perhaps for you then, the duress and stress will be in a fight. Perhaps that's a fight for your life, right? Perhaps under the duress and stress, it will still not be revealed to you because it's opaque to your mind or it's opaque to your value system, but it may not be opaque to your opponent. Your opponent may very well see that till now subtle error, and then of course take advantage of it. So anyway, that's how I feel like I'm in a lecture mode. So we've just stayed in cat stance here. So now I'm going to keep my foundation foot facing southwest, and I'm going to just turn this femur 30 degrees here. So I'm more or less west, I guess, here. And so there's my cat stance. Remember that I could face it fully, and I can face to this open side of the stance, sort of. So my belly button is somewhere in between, where my two femurs are, where my feet are. And I think I'll just kind of keep my torso where it was when I was 90 degree in the cat stance. We probably went over this, but since it's a review, if I reach too far and I draw my weight to the arch side of my foot, away from the blade side, the pinky, the outer edge of the foot, that's a good signal here that I can't comfortably keep my weight on that leg. And I'm going to be asked to either extend this leg extra to try and push me back, or to actually just accept too much weight for what we call a cat stance. So the cat stance really, could kind of be anywhere in here. That would all be fine, but at a certain point, that's getting too far. Now, if I went a little bit lower, I might be able to go a little bit farther. Similarly, going a little bit higher, although I'm fairly high, I'll be a little bit closer to myself because the overall length of the leg hasn't changed. So I'm just describing this 90, 60, 30, how many degrees I'm open or closed, but really it could go anywhere in there. I just want to try and practice it in a few representative degrees. Good. So I'm going to just check in. Yeah, yet again, it looks like most people have not continued to watch, and nobody has asked a single thing. So. I don't know if I'm lecturing to anybody or talking to anybody. This is the life. I'm going to just come back to 30. And I'm just looking for a stretch here, so I'm going to keep my torso to the west, so I'm looking to the outside of the empty foot, keeping my foundation knee tracking, keeping this empty, light. And we'll just change it. We may be able to see that track as I'm starting in line with the fluorescent lines here, that northeast southwest line. So as we come over here, we might be able to more readily see those angles. I'm wondering if I did this, it helped to, I don't know how well that shows on camera, but that might, there's my 90 degree marked out. Here, here, I'll come to like a half length, here, full length, here, and then sat length, mid length, half length, so quite close. And I'm not going to just stand in this one. I feel like I just did for a few minutes, just trying to help review. So we'll go into the Chi Lín here. There's our line. Again, this one, like the cat stance, might be one that you really want to have something to be stable with. I'm trying to keep these at a distance that they're actually out of my way a bit. But if you did want them for your support, I'd rather have them near enough to be closer to under you than far away. That encourages you to lean in hopes of reaching your extrinsic support before you need it. So here's that Chi Lín, tracking the knee, dropping without that knee going anywhere. So I'm dropping my knee towards my heel. Easy here once you go low to start to bow again, so try not to bow. One kind of tradition of this was to do this with the back shin parallel to the earth as the practice. So trying to just find a nice distance for me. So you may be able to see here that my shin tracks from here to here, you know, as it cuts across this diagonal, which means that the lower that I go, the more my groin is protected, right, by that shin. Up here it starts to peek out. So the lower you go, the more protected that is. And certainly the stance might be used for, you know, dropping down beneath an attack, right, or driving your energy up from beneath, like somebody swinging at you and just dropping down. So we could practice the Chi Lín, because it's this training horse stance relationship of the heels, just by carefully pivoting and bringing ourselves around. And that might mean you want to, you know, move your external support. So in the Lín, generally you're going to be facing the original direction, right? As I was describing how the heel and toes line up as a way of describing it, finding your way in. You might normally find your way into it by jumping into it or something. So just the way I'm helping us find into it to make sure that everybody can clearly understand. But at any rate, in this direction, which again is my southwest, I might be facing the diagonal here. So kind of west-southwest over here, you know, where my foot is open to, maybe even west, if that's how far we've gone. I might be facing camera, and I might be facing a bit to the open side, but much less likely that you'd be facing in this direction in Lín. But you could, but I think if we started to go in that direction, we'd change into a cat or some other stance or take a step. But I'm probably addressing something in here, and more likely here. Anywhere in there would be where I'd want to be dealing with in this stance. If I needed to deal with something else, I'd step, pivot, change stance one way or another. Good. So that's our review. I think what I'll do, I'll just take a drop stance here while I sip my tea. So we'll review one of the earlier ones. And then to do the other side, I'll review my back stance. Not really with commentary, it wasn't my intention to review the first three stances. But as I have to blow the nose, similar for back stance, I'm going to be facing here to here. Don't really want to face to the outside of this leg, but I might shift my weight a bit out of the rear leg and turn a tiny bit. But I'd say for all intents and purposes, it's within this 90. Certainly I can go a little bit beyond here, and probably I don't even want to face all the way here. So it's probably more here than here. I don't know how well you guys can see that with the direction I'm facing, but anyway, I'm going to continue to enjoy this very cold. It's probably about freezing. It looks to be a cold week too. Hey Ed Haynes, Jared is listening and practicing. Look at that. Now I don't feel alone. That's good. Great, great, great. So that means we did horse, we did boo-boo, we did back stance. So that was the original three. Really didn't review them. I just did them while we're in this. And then we reviewed the Lín and the cat. And so now we'll do the metal chicken, which was the one we did last night. So I'm going to start this, how do I want to do it? With my foundation foot. Yeah, I guess let's do it that way. I'll start this with my foundation foot towards the camera. Probably I should graph these out if somebody was unclear about the directions I'm talking about. I'm trying to be clear. So here's my chicken stance, and so I'm standing on one leg. So now we have that challenge that we talked about today, right? Is this so weighted here but unsupported from below that I feel like this hip is higher? So I lift the knee. I might just lift that knee enough that my toe just floats off the ground. So basically as low as I can be, but be single-legged. And if I wanted to go, I can maybe get my thigh to 45. That would be nice. And if I wanted to bring it up as far as thigh parallel, that's fine too. Well, my foundation leg is towards you, and I'm going to bring it up, I guess about here, and then I'm going to try not to have it be too open. I'm trying to lift, my right thigh is tracking towards the southwest, as is my unweighted thigh, and then show the arch of the foot to the knee, and there's my metal chicken. Very competitive. So we'll do the other side here. And again, if you'd rather be here or here, they're all the same stance. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Good. So, of course, my foundation knee is bent. That's almost a definition of the foundation leg. If it's bearing weight, it's bent. If it's bent, the knee tracks with the rest of the foot from the heel towards the toes. If it's bent, I don't want to bend myself at the waist in such a way that I'm unaware of it or not purposely choosing to, and the default will normally be to keep the body upright. So for our purposes, we're going to say don't add any excess or unplanned or ineffective bend to the hip. So here's the chicken, so we'll change. Now I'm going to do, so again, I'm facing southwest with my foundation foot. This time I'm going to open this femur, let's say 30 degrees, just like we talked about with the cat stance. When we do, and again, feel free if you need some support. Just as we talked about with the cat stance, I'm saying 30 degrees, 60, 90, all of the degrees in the middle would all work, they're all fine. A particular number of degrees might be prescribed in some form, but what would constitute the stance is anywhere in there. And I would say what would constitute a good art or a good student is somebody that knows why they are where they are. Now we're just practicing the stance for the sake of the stance. So wherever you like to be is totally fine. Good, and make sure that we're pointing the arch towards the knee. That gives me a particular quality in the shin, the ankle, the instep, the foot of the empty leg. Just as with the cat, here I am facing my foundation leg. You know, it's track, but I might be turned to match that, let's say 30 degrees off. I might even be turned a little bit past it, which to me feels quite defensive, like this is a fence between me and the threat. So here I am, but it's much easier for me to keep facing camera. It feels more natural. So let's try it now to 60. So I'm weighted here. That was tough. Started reaching for something else and lost my balance. I don't see any other comments, so trying to do my part to check in. So there, I just need to set down. I lost my balance a little bit as I was focused on this. So a really good bit of training here would be to spend some time at this position, twisted, matching, and open. So I'm in this open 60, mid metal chicken, mid meaning that's full, that's mid, that's low, you know, just the terms I'm coming up with here. So there's my mid metal chicken, facing open, facing width, and facing the closed side, right? So, you know, give myself 30 seconds here, 30 seconds here, 30 seconds here. That's a fair amount of time to stand on one leg. But for me to help lock it in and come to understand it and get some of the stretch and the strength and the endurance, totally fine to have a support. Do my 30 seconds, 30 seconds, 30. You know, I just picked that number. Maybe it's 8 seconds, maybe it's a minute and a half, whatever it is. So last one, I feel like I'm wobbly there. We're gonna come up here. Well, that kind of works perfectly. Just barely reaching the chair there. I guess that would give me good feedback if I was, wavering in my knee. Right, like if I touch the chair. Maybe if the chair's a little lower, I could cheat and just kind of rest on it. I need one of those green chairs that we can Photoshop out, the green screen color. So I can do these postures like this. So there's my chicken. Go to the other side. Actually, I'll do this one instead of just go to the other side. I'll do it from the side. So profile. So here, there's chicken. Here's me facing. I can't face to the outside since it's a 90. I mean, my head could, but I can't turn my torso any further. So here's the 90. Here's to the mid open, and here's to the full open as I'm in that stance. So there's our review. I kind of touched on the drop crouch stance, back stance, and warmed up with the horse stance. And then we did a little Chi Lin, often translated as unicorn stance. And did our cat stance. And then we did our metal chicken stance, often translated as rooster stance or golden rooster, because why not? Golden sounds far more cool. What's the word? Signifying good fortune. So possibly we'll be working on this every day. My thought was that maybe we would come up with some other suitably simple, sensible things to work on. Maybe shifting, maybe stepping drills, maybe stepping skills, and we'll work our way up to drills. Maybe tuina, maybe breathing. Certainly we can do the upper body stuff, but right now we're just kind of working on the lanka. Mystical chair stance, yeah. That's great. All right, well, thank you all very much. Much love, be well, and practice. Steve Watson, Someday Farm.